Hello, and welcome to Chamber Showcase. I'm Lisa O'Loughlin, the host of the show, and as always, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to another episode of Chamber Showcase. Here we talk about the Chamber of Commerce, the City of Malden, the businesses of Malden, events that have just happened or are about to happen, and we always have a guest come in, a guest or two usually come in and talk about their business, the value of the Chamber, what they contribute to the Chamber, and how the Chamber contributes to them. So starting with the past, recent past, we just had the Mayor's State of the City breakfast. If you didn't have a chance to attend, you missed another unbelievable, entertaining, highly informative hour and a half or so of the Mayor and his State of the City, this wonderful, exciting, vibrant city. And one of the things that always happens every year is he makes this very grand entrance. And I worked at the show, and people kept coming to me saying, how do you think he's going to arrive this year? How do you think he's going to walk through the door? How's he going to get here? Everybody was buzzing in the lobby area, and nobody had the answer. So, of course, he arrives via the arcades, playing Pac-Man, Frogman, Mario Brothers, and every other game you can imagine while he's trying to walk down the street and avoid all the characters. And I can't put it in words. I just can't describe how funny, clever, witty the whole thing was. So once again, Mr. Mayor, you did an awesome job just arriving at the State of the City address. And again, your information was phenomenal. I would be remiss if I don't thank the Chamber. Again, it's a Chamber of Commerce event. Joan Monjo and her assistant did a great job with that. And Donna Dettencourt also addressed, our president of the Chamber, addressed the group. And just a great job, a great committee to make it happen, a lot of volunteers, over 300 people. Again, it's always a sellout. If you missed it this year, you got to go next year and book early because the tickets do sell out. And again, I want to say, not only do I want to thank the Chamber, but also the special sponsors that make it very possible for this to happen, and our platinum sponsors of the Chamber year-round. Without their commitment, the Chamber would not be nearly as successful as it is. It takes a lot of money to run a Chamber of Commerce and make worthwhile events. And again, thanks to all of you for all of your help to make that happen. Upcoming events, the very next upcoming event is going to be a legislative breakfast with Senator Jason Lewis. There'll be a light breakfast available, and it's going to be held at the Malden Public Library in the Converse Reading Room. And that's going to be next Wednesday, March 4th, 7:30 to 9. It is a free event. You may want to reserve a seat to make sure there's room because, again, I think it's going to be a well-attended event. The next upcoming big event is my favorite, and if you've watched the show for years, every year I go through this, my very favorite event of the year is Taste of Malden. I love food. I love the restaurants in Malden. I love eating at them, but better yet, I can hit many of them all in one spot in one night, and that will be coming up April 27th. There'll be a lot more information about that. We're also going to have Restaurant Week that same week. Last year, 2019, was the first time that we had Restaurant Week with the Taste of Malden, and those restaurants that participated had special menus or special deals for Monday through Thursday of that week. And they thought it was a great opportunity to showcase their food. I went to 2 out of 7 in a week, plus the taste on Monday. I did a lot of eating that week. But anyway, so that's coming up. And again, it's a premature announcement because I'm already excited about it. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But again, the very next meeting, the next event is Jason Lewis at the library, which is a great segue into introducing my only guest of this show, because we have so much to talk about, and that's Dora St. Director of the Malden Library. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you could be here because there's lots going on at the library.
Yes.
In the Converse room and the Converse family. So.
Well, and we're really looking forward to the Chamber event because it's a sort of chance for people to get into the old building and see how beautiful the renovations have become. We've been renovating it for several years, and so you'll really get to see it and actually sit down on those historic tables and have breakfast. So it's kind of a rare opportunity for everyone to come in.
And once again, the Chamber sponsoring and making it all happen.
Right.
And speaking of the Chamber and membership, a few months ago, we had our new members.
Yes.
And again, I did a lot of taping on that and a lot of talk about it. It was a highly successful event, but I distinctly remember you saying, and I don't want to quote you exactly, you can probably say it better than I, you've always been a member, but now you're an individual member. Is that something like that?
Well, no, that we were early members of the Chamber when it was the Board of Trade, if you can remember. The Board of Trade preceded the Chamber back in the 1890s, and we were involved in the Board of Trade through Elijah Converse, who built the library. And so people often don't think of us quite in that way, but the things that people don't know about the Malden Public Library, which is kind of its interesting structure, is we're actually a nonprofit corporation. We're a business. And so we have partial support by the City of Malden, but actually a lot of what goes on for keeping the building has to do with the same kind of issues that businesses have about maintaining their buildings and finding money to fix things and all those things. So we kind of have that in common. The also thing I find fun is we were doing a lot of things with the Chamber, but we weren't a paying member of the Chamber, so we're happy to become paying members of the Chamber, which is a good thing.
And that's what brought you to the new member, even though you had been a member before your time.
We have a lot of things in common, because again, it's our sort of mission to support the community, to find out what the community needs and figure out how to support that, whether it's education, whether it's fun and entertainment, or whether it's a small business person trying to, get a business database and figure out the tax laws or all of that. We're there to help do that. So it's a really good fit, I think, for us to do that. Plus, we have a beautiful space.
You do have a beautiful space. Many years ago, when I was involved in a business here in Malden, we did raffle baskets for a wine tasting.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's coming up in May.
Is it? I was just going to say that. When is that? That's a very important fundraiser for you.
Yeah, it is. And the wine tasting, we did wine for 21 years. We did a wine tasting. And last year, for the first time, we tried brew. So we did beer, and it was a huge success. So we're going back, and it will be a brew fest again. It's done by the Friends of the Malden Public Library. Tickets will be on sale probably in a month or so, because it doesn't happen again until May. And so basically what it is it's turned into a garden party. So we had the lights, we had out in the garden, which often we hadn't done. So it was a lovely evening event. The music was great. The temperature was lovely. And so we're looking forward to again.
And we have a new brewery in Malden.
We do. We have great support from both Idle Hands and Faces, as well as other breweries that come, and they're so supportive of us and help us find the other breweries. And so it's a good time to sort of get to know them as well.
Great. Okay. So back to the Converse family, the Converse room, the history. What's going on with all that?
Well, I think what might be interesting to Chamber members as well as the public is that not only did Elijah Converse build the public library and set up the library, but he was actually the first vice president of the Board of Trade. So he was the first vice president of the Chamber. What's now the Chamber? It became the Chamber of Commerce. So it was called the Board of Trade in those days, and so he was the first vice president. So he really, we're doing a special thing. It's his 200th birthday, June 28th, 2020. And so we've spent a whole year, and we'll spend all this year celebrating the Converses. The whole family was involved with many things in town. If people don't know, the Malden Hospital, they were early funders of that. The old auditorium, the YMCA, the Industrial Aid Society, the library, and parks, Fellsmere Park and Pond, Pine Banks Park.
Pine Banks, I knew that
there's
too.
just a lot of because he was the largest employer, first mayor, had most people worked for either what they called the rubber shop, which was the Boston Rubber Shoe, or Converse. So because of that, he was the wealthy, lovely, and
Sure.
he was someone who shared that wealth. And I think that's kind of neat for people to see.
Yeah.
So we're celebrating that. We're celebrating the workers in the factory. You have things coming up on the workers who were in the factory. And then all the descendants of the Converses are coming to town.
And how many are coming?
I think there's 100 to 150.
Wow.
And they're coming, and they're going to do a bus tour of town. Then they're going to come to the library. We're going to have an exhibit for them, and they're going to have a little time at our place. And then they're going to have a family barbecue in Pine Banks Park. And the final thing is a church service. First Baptist Church is also a Converse building, so they'll have a service at the First Baptist
that's
Church.
wonderful.
So they'll be here. They're coming from all over the country,
Yeah.
and a few from Europe.
Wow.
So
That's
a
impressive.
good
That's
event.
very exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's middle of June.
So, when I first spoke with you on the phone and I wanted you on the show to talk about the Converse family and this big event and all of that, I mentioned that a long time ago, in the 80s, I worked for the Malden Visiting Nurses.
Ah, yes.
And I remembered the history that in like 1900, something about the shoe factory, or the rubber factory rather, there was a fire and the displaced workers, and he wanted to provide some health care for his people, maternal child health and basic well-being. And he either, I don't really know the history, but anyway, I put that bug in your ear, so
You
tell me,
did.
what did
well,
you learn?
I think I just brought a few little things, and I think it kind of says the whole thing. They did have the Great Fire of 1875.
Okay.
That put most of the people who were working, which was most of town, working at the rubber shop out of work. He did rebuild, but in the meantime, there was a lot of need. And he was trying to meet that need, but I think he needed help. So in 1875, after the Great Fire, he had a meeting of town organizations, and they said, whilst the blackened walls and smokeless chimneys of the rubber factory pleaded eloquently for the deprived of their means of support. So they had the first meeting right after the fire for not, what am I going to do, my factory's on fire, but how do I help all these people who need work?
Yeah.
So they raised $2,000, which in 1875 was a
lot of money.
a lot of money, and they put that toward founding what was called the Malden Industrial Aid Society, which still exists to this day.
That's right. I can remember that from my visiting nurse days.
Yeah, and 21 Ferry, the building.
My little building over there,
And if people haven't been to Ferry, they'll see that lovely little stone building that the Converses built that's still there on Ferry.
So there were two matching ones.
There were two matching ones,
The
and one is
Malden
still
VNA
there.
was in one of them, and that's now down for the parking lot.
Right,
But
and the day
that's
nursery was in the other.
where I started my home health career,
how lovely.
40-something.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I thought was lovely, is when they founded the industrial aid, what they said, it was besides feeding the hungry and clothing the naked, they have obtained homes for helpless children, aged persons, have opened the doors of hospitals to sick and maimed, have visited prisoners, have found means of shelter for the wife and children from the brutality of the drunkard husband, have ministered in variety ways to shut-ins, have nursed the sick, and even buried the dead. So it was a real holistic look at the whole thing.
It certainly was.
And so from that came what was called the Community Nursing Association. And from community nursing came the VNA.
Visiting nurses, yeah.
And it was really amazing to me to find out that there was just this one woman who I desperately want to know more about, but maybe we'll have some time. We should all do more research about her. But her name was Dr. Mary Clark. And she became a doctor in 1913, and she served the Malden through both the industrial aid and the visiting nurses, and through being a city physician till 1953.
Oh, so that's that's in my lifetime.
Yeah, and there are people who still remember Dr. Clark coming to their schools and checking them out in the 40s. So she said she worked 7 days a week. She never took a day off, and her whole life was devoted to this, as they were in those days. And so she really cared for so many families. And so she was sent out. For instance, you would go to the day nursery, and for a small bit of money, you could actually leave your children, and they would get fed and they would sleep, and like we have daycare today, but much cheaper. And Elijah Converse's family pretty much supported it. And then what would happen, I expect, is that at some point illness would come, and through the industrial aid, they'd identify you, and they would send you a a visiting nurse.
Yeah. Maternal child health was very strong too. Women having their babies at home and needing help, and I remember that was one of the basis of the original Malden community nurses, was a lot of maternal child.
And what seems to have happened is then it fed into the Malden Hospital later.
Oh, much later. In fact, that was in the 80s. It became part of Malden Hospital. They changed the name to Middlesex Home Healthcare.
Oh,
Piece
okay.
of history for you.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. We lost our identity.
Okay.
So we went back to Malden visiting nurses, but then Malden and Melrose, the whole Hallmark thing, and it eventually became Hallmark Visiting Nurse and Hospice.
Oh, okay.
So that's, and I was gone then to another V&A in Medford. But anyway.
But it's fascinating history in terms of, the fact that at the Rubber Shoe, they would identify families in need, and they would not only, they would provide them food, they would drop off food, shoes, of course, were easy to get. But it was really, he was an interesting factory owner. There was, if people don't know, the rubber shoe industry became a huge monopoly right about in the 1890s. And so all the other rubber shoe companies sort of became part of this monopoly owned by a corporation. And it wasn't as friendly to the worker. And Elijah Converse, his rubber shoe was as big as all the entire monopoly that was happening. And they wanted him badly. And he held out. He held out. He wanted to have that connection himself. And so it really wasn't until almost toward his death day that they finally became part of U.S. Rubber. So and he did things, people don't know, he did things like he had a library in the factory for the workers. He had English as a second language classes very early on.
Wow.
In like the 1860s, 1870s. So it was really, that some people call it a sort of, they really lived within work because they were working a lot.
Sure.
And so their whole family.
We're talking about work-life balance
there
these
was no
days.
work balance. No.
Everything was work, but he brought the balance to the factory, a little bit of it.
My grandmother was worked in a textile mill, and she remember, you'd have your big Christmas parties at the factory. You had, it really was your family in a lot of ways.
Sure. Where was the shoe factory?
It was actually on Commercial Street.
On Commercial
Street.
Street.
And people often ask what was the address. The problem, it was 16 acres. So it was huge. If we can imagine, I always tell people, think of Lawrence, think of Lowell, think of those mill buildings with the mill housing, boarding house, mill girls, all of that. It was all there.
Wow.
And so it was really huge.
So that's where it was. Interesting.
And then they had a second factory, which is still existing, Jack Flats.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
In Melrose,
but that's
on the line.
That's where the new buildings, the new condos, units.
Right, but they're in the original building.
They're in the building. Oh, that is the building.
That is the building, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, so we intend to have the barbecue for the family overlooking, so they can have their barbecue right at Pine Banks, looking at looking at the factory.
So Pine Banks straddles Melrose and Malden, and it's a shared resource. It's a beautiful, beautiful park. But I also knew about the Converse family really starting that up. Wait till they see it today.
Oh yeah, I think they're
any locals? I mean, I know you said they're coming from all around in Europe, but are there any Malden local people?
No, a Situate and the Cape.
Okay.
Is really the local.
They won't recognize the city then, will they? I don't recognize the city from one day to another.
I think it's really amazing to think that, here's a group of people who their great-great-grandfather just basically gave all his money away. One of the things I found that I love so much is he cared so much for sort of the people who are having a tougher time, that when he died, his will, he gave, he set aside a huge amount of money in 1904, and he said it was specifically to be divided for the poorest of the operatives in the factory. Not to his business manager or any of that, but to be divided among the very poorest of the people in the factory, which says something about a man, I think.
Sure. Well, clearly he was very much of a missionary almost.
He was. Well, he was poor to begin with, so I think he grew up on a farm. He grew up having to work when he was very 13. So I think he was of that generation where they had understood, they had struggled, and now they were going to try to help others do the same. So.
How old was he when he passed, do you know?
You know,
I didn't mean to
don't.
put you on the spot.
No, I don't.
I'm just curious.
I know that he wasn't young.
No.
I know he was fairly old.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
That's okay.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah. And how many people coming? 100 and up to 150?
150. Wow. Yeah. Plus the community.
What a party.
So what we're going to do is in June we'll also have an exhibition of things related to the industrial history of Malden. So we're not only doing shoes. We're called it Made in Malden. So we're going to be looking also at other industries that it's quite an amazing thing when you start looking at what was made in Malden.
Yeah, the mills. We had the fabric, wasn't it? The fabric down on Eastern Ave, and there was a fire. That was.
We need to talk because I'm still searching for all those things. Because people tell me about Vogue dolls. You know, we certainly know that New England coffee and Panadossi are over 100 years old.
Yeah, sure.
We know that the flathead nail was invented in.
Oh, really?
So there's a lot of interesting history along the way.
Yeah.
So we're going to highlight some of those other made in Malden industries.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So in the Converse room, tell us about that at the library, because a lot of viewers, I'm sure, if you've not been to the Malden Library, first of all, you need to go. It's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
By itself, it's a beautiful building. And then inside, there's sort of a traditional library side, but the Converse room. So talk about that a little bit.
And we've integrated them a lot more than people think now. You can now go to the Converse on Monday nights and Wednesday evenings of any week. And we have local history. You can enjoy the building, but you can also do local history research, family history. And then we have the Park Street. We used to call it the New Edition, but it's getting 25 years old. So we now call it the Park Street Edition.
Okay.
And there's so much going on there. We have programs all the time. You can, coming up, just to kind of let you know a few things, to kind of give you an idea of the things we're up to. We have a pastel painting class coming up in March. We have movie nights. We're actually doing a Malden Reads related movie coming up. We have board game night for adults. We have the Historical Societies having a show and tell. These are all in March. You can find them all on our website, maldenpubliclibrary.org. The Chamber Breakfast is coming up.
Yeah.
We're big into the census. We're getting ready for helping people with the census. That's going to be a big one coming up. And then I invite you all, March 28th we're going to have something called the Art of Slowing Down, which I need to do, and everybody needs to do that. And what we're going to do is we give art tours every month of the art collection. We have an amazing art collection.
That's right, I do them.
And we've been renovating the art gallery, so if you haven't been for a while, you really want to come. It looks totally different than it used to. And we're doing one painting, 1 hour. So we're going to concentrate on one painting, and we're going to all try to slow ourselves down.
In the moment.
In the
moment
plus,
kind of a thing?
Plus we'll have time to explore the rest of the art. But we're going to take a little time, and sometimes when you go through a museum, you know, you look at one piece and you look at one piece and you don't have a moment.
No, you're overstimulated.
You're overstimulated.
Yeah.
So and our phones, we're overstimulated. So we're gonna one painting, 1 hour, and we're gonna just slow ourselves down.
Oh,
so
that's a great.
We invite everyone to
great
that in
idea.
March.
Yeah. So again, just tell our viewers again your website so they can find all these dates.
www.maldenpubliclibrary.org. Easy to remember. And on there we have a calendar of events, and there's all kinds of things going on for all ages. Story times and craft programs and board game night and book discussions and all those things libraries do, as well as the fact that we're this amazing art gallery. So there's a lot of art going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that you are overseeing is Malden Reads.
Malden Reads.
So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, and in some ways it's an extension of all the things we do, which is creating community. We feel a strong library equals a strong community.
Yeah.
It really is something people look for when they move to a community. They look for a strong library, and one of the things Malden Reads does is try to bring together long-term residents, new residents, all together. And the idea of it, which Anders Rose says so well, is what if the entire town read the same book? So that's where it starts. It actually started, I think, in Seattle long ago, but ours is really gotten quite expansive from many of the other programs in that we have lots of different community groups all doing programs. Like they'll have book discussions at the senior center, they'll have things at the school. So it's a really really wide community program. And so this year is Fahrenheit 451.
And I understand the Chamber's involved in that. Donna Dentoncourt, our president, is encouraging us all to do it.
Yep, and we're going to have a book discussion with the mayor at the library, so that should be fun. And we're actually bringing in the biographer of Ray Bradbury, who wrote Fahrenheit. He's coming to town, so that will be a lovely event.
Yeah.
MaldenReads.org, and you can see everything there. And but it's just what I love about it is that there's something for everyone. Yeah. If you like to eat, you go to a restaurant and there's special community dinners. And you can talk about the book or not talk about the book, but you can have a wonderful community dinner. And if you just like to read, there's book discussion. So there's film. So there's something for everyone.
Yeah. It's a hidden gem. I don't think enough people know about it. You're busy. Maybe you don't want more people to know about it.
More the merrier. More the merrier.
But and you mentioned, a healthy library is a sign of a healthy community. Yeah. I often say that about the chamber. Yeah. A healthy chamber is a healthy community, and we just feed each other that way. And you're just one of our many gems that helps the city. Thrive the way it does.
It takes a village.
It does take a village.
It does take a village.
Do you think the Kindle and all the online books, has that made a difference for you?
It has. It means that what we do is we provide the content. So if you can imagine the number of people who come into the library who've gotten a new Kindle or a new giant phone now for the Christmas, and they're not tech savvy. So they're coming in, oh God, I've got this thing, what do I do? Yep. And so we're showing them, one, how to use it, and then we're providing the content. So what that means is that I spend a fair bit of my budget now on e-material. So audiobooks, ebooks, downloadable movies. So once you get your library card, you actually not only can take out physical books, but you can now download those to your iPad or your tablet or whatever you use. And so that is now about 20% of our circulation is now people downloading. Yeah,
they say a real diehard, they need to hold that book, they need to smell that book,
Yeah.
Maybe dog ear the page when they're done for the day or something, not your books, of course, but their own books. I mean,
well, what I like to say is you should have a pile of books beside your bed, and then when you're on the train, you want your downloadables, because you don't want to carry that pile of books. So you kind of have them both. The other thing, they've been doing some studies on the smaller kids, and what they found is we often say, I'm a book reader or I'm an online person. Well, they found the little kids don't see any difference. It's all available to them. They've grown up with it all available. So they'll read a book and then they'll turn around and they'll do something online. They'll read a book online, and it doesn't matter to them the way we say, I'm this or I'm that. They're just, everything's available to them, which is wonderful. So they're going to grow up being able to do it all. So
that's great. That's really good. Do you have to be a Malden citizen to get a library card?
No,
because a lot of our work, I mean, I work, in the city or not, or live in the city and not work here, but whatever it might be, there's so many people.
No.
So mobile as well.
No, you just need a form of ID. I am who I am, and I have an address. We do require an address. So it doesn't have to be in Malden, but it has to be a physical address. Okay. And you bring in, either your driver's license with your address, or we have this thing where if you're new and you haven't gotten everything together, we have little Post-it notes, and we'll mail them to you. So easy to do.
Do you still have non-returned books, late returns, and?
Well, we do have some, but recently we did away with all the fines for children's books because they find that that's keeping kids
from a deterrent.
Books.
Sure it is.
So we don't
get
do
them
that
back
anymore.
anyway. Oh, that's good. That's great. So you have a lot going on at the library, and we're working together, the chamber and the library. Again, the breakfast coming up.
And on Congress 2020.
That's right. And Malden Reads. Our book discussion is going to be at Idle Hands, which ties right back around to your brewery. So you see, everything goes around, comes around, and whatnot. So you found out about the Malden visiting nurses. That's great.
But there's
Malden
more to
community
find out.
Nurses. There is more to find out.
So you got to come over.
I would love to do that, and I guess I have to come down and say I haven't been to the library for a while.
Well, here's what I tell people, because people often say, you know, we have the art, they'd love to see the art collection, and we have art tours every month.
Okay.
But what I tell people, if you have a group,
Yeah.
2 people, 1 people, 3
Yeah.
people, call the library, ask for Dora.
Okay.
We'll get you a tour.
I will do that then, because I also have many clients of mine
love to
that
bring
would
them
love
through.
to do that. Dora, this was great. A lot of information, a lot of very interesting, fascinating information. Thanks for coming. I wish you well with all of your events, and I hope to see you at the next chamber event as well.
Excellent. Well, I definitely will be there.
Okay, so busy show today. Thanks so much for joining us. And if we see you at the breakfast, fine. Otherwise, at the library for any of the other events. And we'll see you here next month for lots of talk about the Taste of Malden. Thank you and good night.